and this is my opportunity to do just a short teaching on the topic of Shir HaShirim, the topic of love, the topic that is central to this Shabbat. It is the Jewish practice, at least since the 16th century, to not only count the Omer, which is the 49 days between Passover and Shavuot, leading to the receiving of Torah on the 50th day, but to dedicate each of those days to refining ourselves so that we'll be worthy of receiving Torah. And the blueprint, the map for that self-refinement is the 7 sfirot, the 7 qualities of God that are manifest in creation. This is a chart of the 10 sfirot, God's DNA. The top 3, Keter, Chachma, and Bina, are a mystery. They are God's mind. But the lower 7, represented as these 7 weeks as well between Passover and Shavuot, are as follows: Chesed, kindness; Gevurah, restraint; Tiferet, harmony or compassion; Netzach, ambition or prophecy; Hod, humility; and Yesod, foundation or creativity; and Shekhinah, receptivity, the feminine dimension also identified with the people of Israel. Each week is dedicated to refinement of a quality. And this, the week of Pesach, is about chesed. It's about love. And on day 1, that was the night of the second Seder, we focused on a quality of love, namely love of love. And today is the second day of the counting of the Omer. And the rabbis do a subset, Gevurah, self-restraint within love. So a little comment about today and the work that we're invited to do. And that is, ask ourselves, as an act of reflection, to what degree do we live a life in which we manifest love? And the rabbis emphasize that love is not just giving. It's not just giving unconditionally, though that is a very high level of grace, of loving. But love has to be balanced with gevurah, with restraint, with having a sense of right and wrong in which love can't just pour forth without barriers. In parenting, you may want to always say yes to your children, but you know that for them to grow healthily, chesed, this quality of love, must also have another quality, and that's restraint. Or as the rabbis say, God's love needs vessels, boundaries. So on Shabbat, a day to experience love, there are constraints. There are things we are not permitted to do in order to create the boundaries, the spaciousness. A gardener said, in order for the flowers to grow, sometimes there needs to be fences. Fences to keep out the rabbits from eating the flowers. And so on Shabbat, we express love, but within the context of an architecture of restraint. And so chesed and gevurah throughout our lives is a balancing act. And what we're called to do in expressing love and placing love as a goal for this, the week of Passover, is ask how we can be more balanced, more wise in the urge to give and in the wisdom to know boundaries. And so on this, the day of the second of the counting of the Omer, that's the reflection. How could we be better lovers? How could we enable the freedom of others and yet understand limitation? know that there is an other when we give love who also has needs that we need to honor. And last, tonight we will be looking at a third aspect of love, and that is tiferet, compassion within chesed. For our rabbis teach that only when the overflow of love is balanced with judgment and restraint can there be acts of tiferet, of compassion. And so on this journey, one closing thought, and that's of my teacher, Rabbi Abraham Twersky. He says when people make New Year's resolutions, they all too often don't live up to them because they're like big goals. But change occurs, as he's learned with AA, as a psychiatrist who is focused on people pursuing sobriety, that you only can make change one day at a time, with limited, focused attention, with concentration to get through one day at a time. And so the wisdom of our counting of the Omer in anticipation of Sinai, knowing that freedom is also responsibility, that in this time where we are indoors and not visiting loved ones as an act of self-restraint, in this time we know that we live one day at a time with hope, but that in the counting of the Omer, our own harnessing our goodness this week, our harnessing of love, is taken one day at a time for self-improvement. May this be a day of chesed and gevurah in balance, of that quality of restraint within love make manifest. Ribono shel olam, as we move from slavery, we move toward commitment. As we are unshackled of the chains of those who might tell us how we might live, may we commit to living life chosen in an elevated way so that our love can flow freely with wisdom, enabling compassion. Amen.